All right. All right. So yeah, good evening, everybody. This is episode number 3 of History of Guyana Hockey, and I'm interviewing the great Chris Fernandes, who has contributed so much to hockey in Guyana, first as a player, and then coach and a manager and a president, and even as a father, producing 4 national team players. So I don't think anybody else has produced that much and contributed that much to the sport. Good evening, Chris. Welcome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and we're basically, these interviews are just going to be people telling their own stories about the sport. I'm asking a few questions, but basically, I'm gonna just jump right in and like have you tell your story about, from the beginning. Like, how did you come to the game? I know you didn't start playing hockey; you had to do something else before that. So, over to you. How did you start off, and how did you come to the game?
Okay. my my situation is that I at school at St. Stanislaus, I never played hockey. So I played my football, cricket, athletics, and so on. And when leaving school, I went to play for GFC, the football club, and they had a hockey section. And it wouldn't be long. It wasn't long before, at that time in Guyana in 62, 63, there was a huge exodus through the migration. And so more and more hockey players were leaving. And the boys said, man, it's the same game. You got to score a goal. And the only thing you got problems with is stick rule and the turning rule and whatnot, obstruction. But you won't get accustomed to it. So I picked up the stick and I went to knock around with the white guys. And it wasn't long before I made the second division team. And because of my football background, positionally, it was the same game, and it wasn't hard to conceptualize the question of marking people, having to get the ball before them, and do whatever it is you need to do with the ball to be constructive. Um, so I eventually made the first team, and in those days, as you recall, you just started as player with a sweeper, and they had 3 fullbacks: a centre back, a right back, and a left back.
Right.
Well, I was the centre back. So I had to mark the centre forward more or less, and the sweeper down in the back. Used to clean up whatever come through. So in 1970,
So let me ask you
they were
this:
picked.
from the time you started playing, right? So you pick up a stick in 1962, 63,
It
and
would have
and you make
been it would have been probably but more like 65
so like
because I was
65.
left school. Yeah,
65, you
I
pick up a
want to pick
stick,
up the yeah
and then by 60,
by 68, 69.
you're on
I
the
was
first
playing the
team.
first team.
Nice, nice.
And
Okay,
in 1970, I was selected to go to Suriname, and that is where my story really started.
okay.
Because I was lucky that myself and the old man, I didn't know him before then, huh? Because he was a QC boy and I was a Saints boy.
That's right.
Myself
Yes.
and the old man had the luck of rooming together at a fellow named Carlo Jaime in Suriname. And we talk hockey all weekend. And we talk about in 71, there was the Pan American Games in Colombia, and it was taught by both of us. We got very excited at the idea of trying to get our team to go to Colombia. And so when we came home, we started to work, and luckily we were able to get an American side, the U.S. national team, to pass through for 2 games in 1970.
Okay.
We played the GGCC. We drew the first one, and we beat them in the second one 1-0. And
Okay.
that gave us enough. That gave us enough spirit to go to the Pan American Federation and say, look, we just played against the US and this was the results, and we would like to be considered for the Pan Am Games.
Okay. So let me ask you this, before that, right? To your recollection, as Guyana's independence in 1966. Between 1966 and 1970, what do you recall of like international hockey for Guyana other than the Suriname tour? Like, were we playing Trinidad? Were we playing Barbados? Were we playing Jamaica at that time at all?
What is peculiar, I know they had a little quadrangular series that went on from time to time where Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana would play. I wasn't playing hockey in those days, so I'm not too sure when, before 1970 and
Mm,
1971, when we went to Colombia. I'm not too sure when the last time we played, but I remember um, being aware of the fact that I think we went to Jamaica. In those days was Gary and Rollo Lee and William Lou, and
right, right,
I'm not too sure if Brian Sadler was there,
right.
but Brian was up and around about that time as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not too sure. I know Roger DeAlgie was one day, was outside right,
Yeah,
but I'm not too sure what happened
before 70. Okay.
in that tournament,
Yeah, got you.
and I'm not too sure what happened before that.
Right, right. Okay,
So my involvement with the old man only started in 1970,
got it.
and I know that after the Pan Am Games in '75 in Mexico, I I started to get some problem with my hamstrings, and I decided that I had enough because um, we got the sound looking in Mexico was partly due to the fact that was the altitude was definitely
As a
hampered
fact.
our
Yeah.
was definitely a factor.
Yeah, so
Um,
I asked you a question about playing against Trinidad, etc. before 1970 because like we went to you went to the games in 71 and the results there, I guess you sent me this thing, so I know the results were like 5-0 to Canada, 3-0 to Argentina, but then you lost to Trinidad and then again the US, right? So I'm like, you know, if you beat the US, it gives you some level that you feel like you probably have to beat Trinidad or something like that. But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you guys have like an expectation going to the games? Would you have expected to beat Trinidad essentially?
Well, um, you probably know that at that time, 1970, 71, the game, the system of hockey was changing quite a bit. They used to have five forwards, three
Five, three,
halfbacks,
two,
and two
right, right.
fullbacks. And then you develop the sweeper. So one man come in the back and three people, and then the five. Um, but uh, when we went to Colombia, we didn't have any foreign coach. We didn't have any experienced coach with the new methods being used in international hockey.
Got it.
Harry Shepard was our coach.
All right, right.
And I won't repeat this in public domain,
But it's public
but
now,
myself,
so this is gonna be public. So don't say don't say anything that you don't want to be out there.
no, myself and Skip Roberts hijacked the team. Um,
Yeah, we're rebels. Okay.
because we recognized that we were not as efficient as the other guys. So we had to change our system of play to 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 try to deal with the opposition that was coming at us.
Okay.
So if you're playing against, because by then there come the four forwards,
Right.
two midfield players,
Hmm.
and four fullbacks, one of which was a sweeper. So when you playing and you got a sweeper, a luxury at the back there, you got four forwards coming at you. You have two center forwards basically and two wingers.
Right.
And if you just have the one centre back, as we used to call him, he would be doved. And we quickly realized that in our first matches against Canada and Argentina, that one person could not handle both strikers.
Right.
So our left link, who was always the old man, would drop back, and between the two of us, he and I, we would mark the two central attacking players, the two strikers.
Right.
The wingers were covered by the wing backs, or the wing halves, as we call them in those days.
Right.
And so we had a defensive, because to be able to have a sweeper lineman at the back, you had to give away somebody up front.
Right.
So by bringing a man from the midfield back to mark a striker, you then had to get some additional running being done by the strikers. Because you had to get because if you brought one of the midfielders back, which is Skip, to cover the two strikers with me, it means you only had one midfielder. So you had to get one of the strikers had to do some additional work. I think it was Dennis Fong was the person who had to come back and help in front of where Skip would be. But Harry, God rest his soul, he really did not have the experience to deal with this happening on the ground, on the field for the first time. But we never played at that level before.
Right.
And we just decided little things that we, regardless of what the pre-game plan was, this was our plan. And defensively, if you go through the results, as the tournament went on, we were getting a little better. Less goals were being scored against us. And eventually we won the last match, I think, against Jamaica.
Right.
And we drew one match against somebody else.
Chile again, from what I saw.
Yeah.
1-1. That's nice. Okay.
So we were seeing the light coming to bottom. And that is when we came home from Colombia, we were so enthusiastic that we organized the festival here in the following September.
Right.
And we managed to get floodlights. For the first time, we were able to play floodlights on to play the hockey at night.
Nice.
Because we recognized that if we didn't have the floodlights, we'd have to start, if you're playing 2 matches a day, you'd have to start at 2 o'clock and play in front of empty stands. And nobody looked forward to that. So by putting in the lights, we were able to start at 4:30, 5 o'clock and going to 8, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that
was a big deal to me. You said like school nights are coming out to watch hockey at night and you gotta go home and do homework. It was a good thing. I enjoyed it. It was a big difference on my life for sure.
So that is but at that meeting, at that festival or competition, we took the opportunity to have a meeting with all the representatives from the four territories. And it was decided that this, having restarted the quadrangular series, we would work to have it every 2 years. But Jamaica were riding high economically at the time, and they managed to get a brewery in Jamaica to sponsor the tournament the very next year in Kingston.
Okay.
But the old man had to go overseas on police training, so he was absent. But we went and we did extremely well.
You could talk about the 72 one, right? Which was held in Guyana. Guyana won that, beating everybody pretty much while they were there, and was on top, basically because of the excellent expert hand stopping from the corner.
Yeah, the hand stopping with the man.
Hand stopping was everything.
He never got credit for it, but I wouldn't even call his name.
I mean, people overlook these things. For sure. But yeah, I mean, so that was like, for me, like I said, 1972, Guyana is essentially on top of the Caribbean. at that point because you're beating Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica fairly convincingly, and
Yeah.
you know, and so the next year you go and you play in Jamaica, and the results were big. You got to the final or semi-final.
We played. We won the round robin totally,
Right,
and we beat everybody in the round robin,
right.
and we qualified for the final. But I can remember, I never blame umpires before in my life.
Mhm.
But it was noticeable that we were playing a final against Jamaica with two Jamaican umpires, and whenever things looked dangerous, the whistle went.
Nice.
You know, so I
Yes.
never put it down in the press that it
Mhm.
was that was the cause. But we played exceptionally well. We really, remember myself. We
Right.
the boys were pretty sharp at that time.
Nice. And so that's 74. At 75, you're going back to Pan Am Games again in Mexico City.
Mexico, we went to Pan Am Games again. That was Yoma was back then,
Right.
and we knew we were going to play in altitude, but we got no altitude here to train to get accustomed to.
Right.
So we went to Mexico, and we didn't do too well.
Right.
And I developed a problem in my back, and I was never able to play at what I consider to be my best.
Mhm.
But I recognized on that occasion when playing against Argentina. I think Argentina beat us 6-0, I think.
Mhm.
And I telling myself, being an honest John's son, that no matter how hard I train, I didn't have the individual skill to get to those guys' level.
Right.
So when I came back in 75, I decided to hang up the stick. And I'm not too sure what happened with the old man, but I can't recall him playing after that either.
Yeah, I think at that point he never played for Guyana again after that, but he kept playing with
Yeah.
police, I think, for a while.
Yeah.
I used to always say that I make him retire because he saw me coming up and he was scared to take some dribble from me and stuff.
Okay.
But I realized also that I thought back on it that at that time he was probably almost 40. So he was actually
Yeah.
pushing me. Yeah, he's actually playing for a long time. So, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, but yeah, so basically at that point you are now your playing career is done and you move on to coaching, or was it into
When
that
I
administration part of things?
when we were coming back in 1973 from Jamaica, we passed through Barbados because Barbados couldn't make it.
Right.
In fact, we couldn't make it either, but Jamaica, because we played so well the year before, sent 8 tickets for us.
Wow. Okay.
That made our trip to Jamaica possible.
Hmm.
So when we were coming back, Barbados asked us to pass through and play a couple of games, which we did. And while in Barbados, we had a meeting of the team.
Mhm.
And basically what we were discussing was what can we do to help the game of hockey to grow in Guyana. And it was decided that we would try and get hockey introduced into a number of secondary schools. In those days, only Queen's College played, no other school played.
Right.
So myself and Godrichin, this children were going to Saints at the time, and I was Saints man. So it was agreed that the two of us will take on Saints. And I got a couple of others, went with Christchurch and Multilateral and so on. We had about 4 or 5 teams that we started at the school level. And of course, we did pretty well because Andy was playing at GCC at the while, so he
Right.
was a little ahead of the game,
Right.
and he could run, and he could hit quite well. So he was quite one of the better players. And we got all sorts of other guys who formed a formidable team. No?
Right.
And that whole team, by the time we took them to Trinidad to play, Trinidad and Barbados to play, this is Saints team. When they came back, GCC were trying their utmost to find 11 people to put on the field. and we managed to get GCC to accept the entire team in total as members of the club.
Huh.
And that is where eventually the boys came along, my boys, and up to now, the GCC are still probably one of the leading teams. And no, they're not. We're doing the worse now than we were doing then, because right now we only have about 3 or 4 teams,
Yeah, right.
which is a sad case.
Yeah, yeah. I think I know when I was coming up, I think I could remember counting about 8, teams playing at first division level back in those days.
Yeah, we had GDF and police to begin with.
Right,
Then we had um, Cosmos or Chinese,
right.
and then we had BGCC or GMRSC. We had quite a few.
Yeah,
Then
right.
Park Rovers,
Yeah, even
and then
GSC.
those old Fort people coming from up south.
Yeah, that was later. That was later. GSC, yeah, the G teams, right? GSC,
Yes,
GFC.
yes, GFC too.
Right, three of them. Yeah, yeah,
So
it was a lot.
it's really sad that today, in 2024, we should have so few teams.
Right, right. I mean, we went through those high spells, right? So, like, after 1975, actually, my recollection is that there was not a national team picked until 1980.
Okay.
That was the time that I made it with other people in my age group around that time. But there was not a lot of, and it probably would have been like the 1980 team compared to the 1975 team, might have had like 2 people. So you lose a lot of continuity that way, right?
Yeah.
Migration and the rest of it just kind of
In
hurts the
those
process.
days, George Ford was the coach, right?
He was the captain in 1980. You were the coach. The 1980 team.
1980.
We played against Barbados when they came to Guyana. That was,
Okay, okay.
yeah, so like from 1975, nothing. We didn't go back to Pan Am Games well, we didn't go back to Pan Am Games in 1991 again, right? So
Yeah,
five is not a lot of. There's no international hockey being played in Guyana. Obviously, the team didn't go anywhere, so you lost. There was a lot being lost at that point. But we had a lot of from 1975 to 1980. We did have a lot of internal hockey being played. It was like I remember that being the first time we played indoor hockey during that
yeah,
period of time. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but not international.
yeah.
And so yeah, from there, your coaching was at the high school level with Saints, and then I guess you coached GCC as well, and
Yeah.
and then the national team after that, right?
I was able to go to California
Okay,
for a course sponsored by FIH. You probably come across Shiv Jagde.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shiv, I met Shiv on that course.
Okay,
But as I said, number one, I learned hockey big, not like you when you're a little boy.
right, right,
So, so the skills were not what it should be, my skills. So when you come to coaching, it's one thing to talk it, but another thing to demonstrate and to show people the right way of doing all the different skills. So I had some handicaps in that area, but I look back with a certain amount of pride.
right.
But George became the national hockey coach. He was employed by the ministry,
Right.
and I don't know what happened to him. You were in touch with him at all?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's gonna be that. He's gonna be the next person I interview.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
because I must give him my contact information, man, my
For
WhatsApp
sure, for
number.
sure, definitely.
Because since he left here, we lost contact totally.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen him again.
I've seen him once or
Himself and
twice. We
yeah.
When I first went up to the US, he and I played on the same club team for that first year.
Okay,
And
okay.
then he moved on. He's always in Colorado, I think. So, but yeah, I'll be talking to
Yeah,
him and I'll pass the information on.
yeah.
But yeah, well, so your
Okay.
story now, you're doing the coaching, and we played in 1980, and we played in Guyana, played against Barbados, and of course we see the same thing that you saw when like they had come to Guyana with a whole lot of different skills that we never seen before,
Yeah,
and we realized we got to step some things up. We went back, I think, the same year to Barbados and Trinidad, and you were the coach again. But I think I'm not sure, like at what point you would say that you're coaching at the national team level would end? Was that be like 1980? Or would
Yeah,
you continue coaching some of the teams after that? I think you took a youth
I
team.
coached. I coached until in 1989.
Oh, okay,
We had the Junior Pan American tournament in Trinidad,
right.
and immediately after that, they had a South American Championships in Venezuela.
Okay.
But in Venezuela, um, Gregory Sills took over as coach. I coached the under 21s in Trinidad
Okay.
because three of the four boys were playing at the time.
Right.
No, we did pretty well. In fact, I have it down in my memoirs as my biggest disappointment in the game
Right. Right.
because we was 12 teams and we were right up there about to qualify for the semifinals of the tournament. And to qualify for the semifinals, you just need to beat Barbados. And Barbados had beaten no one.
Right.
And you know, luck would have it. Barbados beat us 1-0. And we ended up playing for sixth place with fifth and sixth with the USA.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the USA 3-0 down San Fernando, 3-0 at halftime.
Right.
And we lost the match 4-3. So that was a signal to me that there really was probably not a good player, but a worse coach.
Hey,
Yeah.
you never know how these things turn, right? Just one
Yeah.
game really, and that did everything, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the psychology is there. Um,
Yeah.
and then after that, basically, well, all through that time, you were also the president of the hockey board.
Well, I'm not too sure how it went. I know Buckley was one time, the old man was next. I became president. I think Ron Gordon was president after me.
Okay,
Um, Ron Gordon used to be at CARICOM. He used
right.
to play for BGCC, Organic Sports Club 1 and 2.
Yeah, yeah, he was GSC. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is, I'm not too sure how long I was president for. I remember that Kilkenny, you probably know Kilkenny.
Right, right,
That's still Kilkenny was a police officer at the training school, and he was the secretary of the board for a long while.
right. Yeah. Okay.
So,
And then all right, so basically your involvement now is just as a spectator and parent and
yeah.
grandparent.
What I am not involved any longer at all. I'm still involved at St. Stanislaus. I'm chairman of the board of governors,
Okay,
but I don't have any involvement in the sport.
right,
You know, I saw Robbie, who is the guy who sent that report, which I shared with you today.
right.
Robbie is Bobby's son. Bobby's
Mm-hmm.
my brother.
Right,
Well, Bobby died a couple years ago, but Robbie is Bobby's son. And he, in fact, is coaches at Saints. And he went with the teams, and he, in fact, sent me that report because I was just, the tournament finished last night
right.
in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Yeah.
got the girls' team and the boys' team. But they have done what we should have done earlier clock. They have formed their hockey section into a club. This is a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when you leave school, you don't have to leave the club.
Oh,
You
okay,
could continue to play for the club.
got it.
And this is quite current. So majority of those students you saw are still at school,
Right.
but some would have gone on, left school maybe last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're still playing for the club, and we're hoping that the president has promised us a ground in Durban Park.
Okay.
Because right now we have still have the big ground on Carifest Avenue,
Right.
but the president indicated that he might want the the real estate on Carifest Avenue to be used for hotel development. And as a result, he's going to give us the same size facility down in Durban Park. And we are hoping to get some help from him or elsewhere, to in fact construct our first artificial surface hockey field.
Perfect.
Because we don't have any artificial surface here, and that is impeding the progress quite a bit.
Definitely. That's really been
Because
the
we
problem.
can't compete outside on artificial surface when we're playing here on grass.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, this is this is a good conversation here so far. Appreciate you for all your contributions to the sport. I don't think, honestly, that anybody in the country could have the set of contributed more to hockey in Guyana at this point. I see Philip trying with his children, but he can get up to 4 children contributing to the playing in the game. So you got to take second.
Yeah, he made the mistake that he only got one boy, he got 2 girls.
Yes, yeah, he can't compete.
Up to last week, he was saying that he recognized how useful it was and how beneficial it was for them to have 4 brothers and in close proximity to each other.
Yeah.
Because that alone kept them going, yeah?
You didn't learn that lesson properly. All right, I don't know you.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks very much for everything.
Okay, partner.
Contributed so
No
far.
problem.
Take
Glad
care.
to be here.
All right.
See you.